Hello, welcome to Cinema Savvy, and welcome back to two movie reviews. Yes, we've done this before with Dumbo and Hellboy. We are playing catch up this week. We haven't done one of these in a long time. Game of Thrones has come and gone. Those reviews are out, and we are back to movies now, and we're getting closer to summer season. We need to catch up on some. So it's going to be a double whammy. John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum, reviewed by myself, and then we're going to pass over to Tayte to review Rocketman, which is obviously the recent Elton John biopic. Interestingly,
I was going to say this is a happier double bill immediately.
Yes, no, oh, absolutely, yeah. In that, I think we both liked these movies.
We both liked each respective movie, which was quite nice.
Should say as well, what makes this very interesting, exactly like Dumbo and Hellboy, is that I've seen John Wick Chapter 3 and you haven't, and you've seen Rocketman and I haven't had a chance to get to that yet. I'm going to try and get to that this week because it is a movie that I do definitely want to check out. And we are also going live straight after this for a review on Aladdin, so we're going to get through this as quickly as possible. And I think we're just kicking off with John Wick Chapter 3.
Yes,
so
we are.
Have you seen John Wick Chapter 1 and 2?
I've seen John Wick Chapter 1 and 2. I preferred John Wick Chapter 1 over John Wick Chapter 2. But outside of, and I know there'll be a huge debate here, which series is better, I prefer the Raid franchise, to be honest, as far as the high-octane action, kind of person shooting up the entire building, using various different types of stunts and stuff like that to do so. But I do enjoy this franchise, and I did like where John Wick Chapter 2 left off. Oh, Chris, I believe you're muted. Now, this is an interesting one. I'm going to continue talking just to make sure that that everything is running fine. We'll make sure that everything is going good.
Hello.
There we go. He's back.
It didn't come up with muted on mine, so I don't know what happened there. But I was just saying that it was good that you compared it to the Raid, because the Raid and John Wick are probably like the two most closest in theme and action style. The two most respective action franchises out there. Even still, we're still waiting for the Raid 3. When is the Raid 3 going to happen? But so John Wick Chapter 3, it picks up directly after where John Wick 2 leaves off. John Wick is excommunicado. He's on the run. There's a price on his head. And we pick up the opening scene of John Wick 3 is literally when he's given an hour by Ian McShane to safety. We pick up in that hour where he's frantically trying to get things in place to maintain his safety. And then the rest of the 2.5-hour movie is just non-stop action all the way through. And I know that that's a very cliched term, non-stop action. Believe me, it is non-stop action all the way through. This movie doesn't let up. And we're at a point now with these John Wick films where, John Wick 1 comes out, and I can understand, like you prefer John Wick 1 to 2. I prefer 2 to 1. But I do understand that 1, without a doubt, is the most self-contained, simple movie. It has the stronger story and the stronger emotional resonance to John Wick's character. And then in the second one, it did kind of open this world up a lot more, this Hitman world. We went a lot more into the lore and all the different workings and everything like that. And this one is more of a step in that direction. It opens the world up even more. Kind of to a ridiculous degree, I would say at this point. John Wick feels almost like a superhero in this third one. The injuries that this guy sustains would kill a man. People die in this movie with a less grievous injury than what John Wick sustains in the movie. It's kind of mental.
But the question is, Chris, was it awesome?
Was it what, sorry?
Was it awesome?
No. Yes, it kind of was-ish. Yes, no, it was awesome. Did I enjoy it as much as the first two? No. And this is going to be like a weird kind of thing that I'm going to review this on, in that 1 has the better story, 2 I prefer because the action is so much greater and I like that it opened up this world. 3, I would say, definitely ups the ante in terms of the action, but I didn't quite have as good of time with this one as I did with the first 2. I think from an action standpoint, it is leaps and bounds above the first, but the story is definitely the weakest in this third one, I would say.
Yeah.
I went into this one expecting that this was going to be the final entry in the trilogy, and without going into spoilers right now, and I'm going to try and keep this as spoiler-free as possible for this review, it does very much, it ends as just as open-ended as the second one did, so we will be getting a John Wick Chapter 4, and I believe as of this point, it's already been confirmed for I want to say a May 21st release, 2021, so John Wick 4 is happening. The action is awesome. It gets to that point where the action almost goes on for too long, and just when you're starting to feel fatigue with it, it'll end, and then like there'll be a brand new set piece. You've seen all the set pieces in the trailer. You've got John Wick riding around on horses. You've got car chases, bike chases, martial arts fighting. This movie really does have it all in this one. And we also introduce a new character into this movie as well. The second act of the film, Halle Berry's character, who I actually thought was going to play a much larger role than she does in the movie. She really is only present for that one action set piece. They go to Casablanca midway through the movie, and we get like a whole action set piece over there. And that's it. She's kind of out of the movie. Whereas I do think that the marketing and the trailers certainly...
Yeah, the trailers kind of portrayed that she would be a huge part of this film. And I'm assuming now there is... confirmed there's going to be a John Wick 4, the next film going on.
Yeah, and I mean, there are characters from previous entries, such as Common from the second one, who doesn't feature in this movie. So again, that's another possibility of possibly you're setting up these characters and introducing this larger world that it then gives you the opportunity to bring characters back into the future ones. I really liked Halle Berry's character. She had, exactly the same training that Keanu Reeves did in the lead up. The choreography in this film is amazing, and that's really where the strength of these films lies now, is that I will say that they've kind of they've left the story at the wayside, and these are action movies. Inherently, you go in to see Keanu Reeves tear shit up for 2 hours. And if
they understood the market that they were aiming for. With the first film, I think they wanted to find that fine balance between a decent story of revenge and having this character who's badass in the way he goes about it. And with the second film, I definitely got the sense of the story almost being not completely dropped, but at the same time having a focus solely more on that action, because that's what brought in kind of the people to come and see the film, not the actual story behind it. I'm just hoping that it doesn't become a little bit too fast and furious. And by that, I mean the story gets dropped entirely and it is just ridiculous sequence after ridiculous sequence.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. And one of the reasons, I mean, I went to see this movie with my mom. Like, this is not a mom movie, but my mom loves John Wick. And I think the reason she likes it is because, one, she's a huge Keanu Reeves fan. And I do think that, Keanu Reeves in his personal life, and also he is just like one of the most humblest guys in Hollywood. He is a really nice, good, he's not the best actor out there, but like he's so goddamn likable that you just appreciate him. And I do think that he effectively brings in that sense of, this is a guy that just needs like a fucking vacation. Like, this is just a guy who needs a break. And we need to be mindful as well that this movie, John Wick Chapter 3, because all of them follow on from each other, this is like a week after his dog got killed from John Wick Chapter 1. Yeah. It's kind of insane when you break it down and you think about that, because these movies have been going on for a considerable amount of years at this point. The action's bigger than ever. There's kung fu, there's horse fu. There's a scene where John Wick, he's like fighting in a stables with the horses, and he slaps a horse on the ass and it kicks a guy in the face and like just shatters his head. Like, stuff like that happens in this movie. And I completely agree with you that I don't want this to go into the completely ridiculous, and it is kind of dipping its toe in those waters, I would say, at the end of this. John Wick sustains an injury towards the end of this movie that, unless they explain how he survived that in the next one, is completely far-fetched and would take me out of the movie if they don't address that. And I feel like they do need to address that. Yeah. What else can I say? If I'm going to rank this along the other ones, I would much rather watch John Wick 1 or 2 over this one. This one did feel a little bit long, like the action did kind of drag on a little bit too much. But it is that kind of balletic, almost like you're watching a dance performance. Like the level of choreography in this film is astounding. How the actors memorized all of these moves, I have no idea. And it is fantastic to watch. It is almost like you're watching a performance, like you're going to like a West End stage show or something, and you're watching these incredible moves like before you. The second act of the movie really does meander, and it really feels like they lose sight of the story. I love the initial setup that he's on the run, and like everyone, we get to the point at the end of John Wick Chapter 2 where it seems like everyone's a hitman. The mother and child on the street corner are both like a hitman tag team kind of thing. Like, we get that sense where this is a heightened world. Even to the point in this movie where John Wick is killing people in crowded spaces and no one's screaming or reacting around them. So it does get to that point where you're thinking, like, how many people in this room are actually a hitman and privy to this kind of violence?
That's where the writers suddenly turn around and face the camera and go, "You two are the hitmen."
Yes, yeah, exactly.
And they release the next Pokemon Go John Wick app. which I would definitely play.
So would I. So would
Holy shit, I would play that to death.
There's really not much else I can say about this movie. Like, I had a really good time. This was actually my most anticipated movie of the year. We were talking just before we went live at how much of a letdown 2019 really is for big budget movies. We're not really looking forward to much. As soon as John Wick 2 ended, I wanted 3. I've got 3 now. I was very entertained by it. If you're an action fan, definitely go and check it out if you haven't done so already. And John Wick Chapter 4, it's happening. So I'll be there at the cinema, probably with my mum again in 2 years' time, getting ready to watch John Wick Chapter 4. I had a good time with it, but it did have some problems with me in the second act of the film. But if you just look past that and just look at it purely from an action standpoint, it's definitely a good one to watch on the big screen with the loudest speaker system that you can. So that's my review on John Wick Chapter 3.
Okay. Now we move on from an incredible, dangerous international assassin to an incredible, dangerous international superstar.
Yes.
In the shape of Elton John's, I guess, almost autobiography, because he had a heavy hand in the writing of this script and the way it was put forward. This is, of course, Rocketman, the biographical surprise musical drama film. I went into this film thinking it would show off a couple of his songs, just like Bohemian Rhapsody did. I was blindsided. It's a musical. It's an actual musical. Like it was so kind of startling. It was just like, oh, okay, so he's gonna go and start singing one of his songs. Oh shit, there are dancers on the screen, and he's in his childhood now, and his child is like, the childhood sense of him is looking up to him and stuff like that. It's just like, oh my god, it's a musical. And as you know, on this channel, the two people who love musicals are myself and Chris. George does not. We won't talk about La La Land right now. But with this musical, Rocketman, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's one of those films where, when you're comparing it up against films which are extremely similar and films which will obviously be compared to, for example, Bohemian Rhapsody, this blows Bohemian Rhapsody out of the water. Rami Malek wouldn't have won the Oscar. Taron Egerton would have won the Oscar. Or I reckon anyone else could have had a shot at the Oscar if this was in that stage, because it would have thrown the spanner in the works. I don't think Taron Egerton's performance is an Oscar-worthy winning acting performance. However, it's miles better than Rami Malek's, which does make me think, wow, this really would have changed things for the Oscars if it was released maybe 4 or 5 months earlier. As far as the film itself, it follows kind of the story of him in rehab, and it's basically him retelling the events of his life, how he got to rehab, through flashbacks, going through every single song, every single rise and fall that he had within his career, how he got his name. And it's very well done. It has a very tongue-in-cheek kind of feel to it. The comedy within it is excellently done. It plays off that you're laughing throughout most of the film, and if you're not laughing, you're definitely on the edge of tears at some of the scenes that you actually get to. It's a hard-hitting musical. Once again, I'm going to keep on comparing it to Bohemian Rhapsody. Bohemian Rhapsody in itself was a very dull film, and this one's very full of life. Not only that, but the life events that lived throughout this film kind of exactly shows what is in the showbiz kind of lifestyle. And I know that they shied away from that in Bohemian Rhapsody, and they even got elements of the story completely wrong. This film absolutely gets it perfect.
Well, I was going to bring that up in that Bohemian Rhapsody was rated a 12A in the UK. This was rated a 15, Rocketman. So
basically,
they get away with a lot more stuff.
No, Elton John said, I did not live a 12A lifestyle. I think he said I did not live a PG-13 lifestyle in one of the things. And it is very much a 15.
So they do push the boundaries in this.
It is a 15. Yes, it is a 15. With copious amounts of drug misuse, swearing, allusions to sex. There is a scene which I can only describe as dark dungeon techno sex orgy.
Oh, okay. And if that doesn't sell this movie, I don't know what else will.
But as far as the film itself, the performances, absolutely love performance from Taron Egerton. Once again, it's a brilliant performance, but I don't think it was Oscar-worthy winning. It was better than Rami Malek's, though. Jamie Bell playing Bernie Taupin, his writer. I love the chemistry between those two characters. Very well done. Richard Madden, hated the character that he played, which meant I loved the performance because you actually made me believe in the actual hate of this person, of this character. And then you have a good selection of supporting cast members as well, who all made the story feel like it came to life. And I will say the way that it went for every single song, you sometimes get this in musicals where every single musical number feels the same. And I've said this about my criticisms of Greatest Showman. I like Greatest Showman as a film. I hate it as a story, and I think it's completely misused, but every single song sounds the same. There isn't a single song in Greatest Showman that sounds different.
It's because they all sound like the top 40 charts, right? What's
Correct.
current, what's popular.
Correct. Yeah. But with this one, they could have stylized it. They could have reimagined some of the songs, in which they do. They do reimagine some of the songs. But the way that they do it in this film, every single song sequence looks different, sounds different, feels different. You know it's Elton John, but it completely feels like a separate entity. It's amazing how they put it together. And I'd say the production design, I think, could possibly go for Oscars. I think also possibly the soundtrack, and I'm sure Taron Egerton will get a shout at Best Actor nomination, even if he won't win it, purely because he sang all the songs. He trained himself to sing like he sounded like Elton John, which is phenomenal. As far as actors kind of learning the craft to get into that performance. And he sounds, you listen to the soundtrack, he does sound like Elton John. It is very convincing.
I was going to say, I remember years ago when this first went into production that an Elton John movie was going to be made. I remember when Tom Hardy was cast to play Elton John. So that would have been a very different movie. I'm not quite sure why that didn't pan out. I guess my final question before we round off is, because you hinted at it slightly, Dexter Fletcher, obviously he took over from Bryan Singer for the final 2 weeks of shooting on Bohemian Rhapsody. Now, when I watch Bohemian Rhapsody, I don't see a Bryan Singer film. I see very much a Dexter Fletcher film. If you've seen Eddie the Eagle, which also starred Taron Egerton, it does have that very same stylized look to it, which from trailers, this one looked exactly the same as well. We will never know where Bryan Singer's Bohemian Rhapsody began and ends in terms of the footage that's in the movie and how the final thing turned out. Does this one have an identity of its own, or is it very much akin to the likes of Bohemian Rhapsody, where you can see that the same director worked on it for a period?
I definitely get hints and flares at Eddie the Eagle, but I don't get hints and flares at Bohemian Rhapsody. Those are two completely separate entities.
Because what I feared is that these musical films, like we've had Bohemian Rhapsody, that's like the main one because obviously it went up for Oscar hype. We've had this one, we've had Netflix's The Dirt, the movie based on Motley Crue, and I'm sure, you know, moving into the future we'll probably get Michael Jackson ones, David Bowie ones, the Beatles or something like that. And I was worried that they were going to fall into a very Marvel style cookie cutter trend where it's the same beats throughout the movie, it's the same kind of look to it, the same kind of style, but you're saying that this one very much does have an identity of its own.
It has an identity, and it somehow manages to. It's somewhere between Bohemian Rhapsody and Mamma Mia. Mamma Mia takes the songs of ABBA and puts them into a story, and it's very similar to Bohemian Rhapsody in the fact that the story is the biography of their lives. So it's a good mix between the two of them, where it is a musical using the songs of Elton John based around his life, and it follows those life events. So it does find its own way within that kind of sector of musicals, of jukebox musicals. And I think it works. The problem being completely is that this was a very good film. I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. But it didn't wow me. It didn't have anything that stood out ridiculously over the top, like, oh my God, wow, that was phenomenal. All it did was it took me on the journey, and I enjoyed the journey very much. Not to say there's a bad film. It's just there wasn't really a defining moment within the film itself that I could pick out. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know if that's just a good, consistent, oh, the film was just good, or whether it was I was expecting something. Maybe even the title song, Rocketman, when that actually came round, I was expecting that from the trailer to be the biggest moment, the best moment. I don't think it was.
Does this earn the big screen experience, or could this have been in like a TV movie?
This does own the big screen experience.
Okay.
A lot of the sequences are pretty out there, but none of them were kind of wow, kind of like Elton John kind of wow, for me at least. So I would recommend people to go see this film. But that's all I can really say.
Well, hey, Tate, like we've got JXE and Brinsley in the comments.
Yep.
They both booked their tickets. They're both sold on the underground techno orgy sex scene. So I'm sure you've turned a lot of people onto this movie, or just turned a lot of people on at the mention of that. Either one. I will be going to see this movie hopefully later in the week. I'm probably going to shoot for Thursday, not just based on that reason. It is a movie that I definitely do want to see. I just couldn't get to it now, so we'll round off on this particular stream now where we've reviewed John Wick Chapter 3 and Rocketman. We are going to be live again in like the next 5 or 10 minutes or so, but like we couldn't have tacked this review that we're about to do on at the end of this one.
No, we could not.
This is too immense. This is too big to talk about. So people in the comments, stick around for like the next 10 minutes and look out for our review on Aladdin, where we'll be going live to do that because it's going to be a doozy. So in the next 10 minutes, we'll see you guys then. See ya.